I'm Diane Meyerhoff, host for Town Meeting Television's Essex Junction Trustees Candidate Forum, part of Town Meeting TV's 2020 election coverage. The show is being aired live on Town Meeting TV, which is now Comcast Channel 1087, streamed live on our YouTube channel, and will also be available via podcast. Today, just to note this important day, is our last day on Comcast Channel 17. So we are now Town Meeting TV. We welcome your comments and questions. If you're watching this program live, please join the conversation via Zoom chat or at 1-929-205-6099. Tonight, I am joined by Dan Karen. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
Amber Tebow.
Hi.
And George Tyler.
Hi.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight.
Sure.
All of our candidates are incumbents, and they're running unopposed for Essex Junction Village Trustees. Since they're running unopposed, we're going to have more of a less formal discussion. So again, welcome all of you. Thanks so much for coming in, tuning in, zooming in. I don't know, whatever you want to say. So we're going to dispense with opening statements. So we have prepared questions. We'll throw some out, and we'll just have a chat about how things are going in the village and what y'all want voters to know about. They are voting next week. Is that correct? Next week?
Yes.
Actually, it's going to be tallied in a second, but the ballots were mailed out a little over a week ago, I believe, and so people are just mailing them in as they do, whatever.
And there's also in-person voting if they want to, though, right, or not?
Yes, on the 2nd.
On the 2nd, okay, which is coming up very quickly. And if folks have not gotten their ballots for next week, they all went out by mail about a week or so ago, so everyone should have them, right? Mm-hmm. If they haven't, how can folks get ballots?
If they haven't gotten one, they should call the Essex Junction, Essex Town clerk at 81 Main Street in the Town of Essex office building, and it's Susan McNamara Hill. But that's what they should do. Dan or Karen, Amber, I can't think of any other way. I think that's the correct thing, don't you?
I think that's right. Yeah.
I think you can email her.
Yeah, you probably get through email. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. You haven't heard anything about folks looking for ballots, or you haven't heard any issues or anything? Okay.
No.
I had one neighbor that mentioned to me that she didn't get one, and my suspicion is that she never changed her residency.
Oh.
So that might happen too, and living in Heinsberg a couple of years ago just hasn't caught up with it yet.
Okay, so those folks should definitely call the clerk's office.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
Absolutely.
Good.
But they went out to over 15,000 people in the village and the town.
Wow.
And they went to every registered voter.
Okay, great.
So yeah.
Good.
Every active voter.
Active voter, right.
Active voter.
Okay, which means you voted in the last couple of elections?
It only means that your registration hasn't been challenged. So in other words, if someone lived here a long time ago and the clerk noticed that, gee, there's been a bunch of other people at that same address, I challenge that person is still registered here. So they challenge them, and I think they send them some kind of a notice. And if the challenge isn't disproved, then but while it's in the process of being challenged, they didn't get one.
Okay. All right. Well,
that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So we know what we have to do. Call the clerk's office if you don't have a ballot.
Right.
And just want to also mention again, if anyone wants to call in, we are at 1-929-205-6099. So let's talk about the budget. That's one of the big items you're all going to be voting on. Proposed for 2021. And my notes say an increase of about 2.26 in the tax rate. So you all are supporting that particular ballot item, and why or why not? Let's start with George.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very reasonable budget. I think we've kept it well within the small percentage, normal cost of living increase that we see every year. I think it's well balanced. I want to point out that the total budget we're asking for is $5,367,000. but of that, we're only going to raise 3.6 million from local property taxes. And that's because under contractual arrangement with the town of Essex, our public works department budget is in the Essex Junction budget, but once our budget is approved, then the town gives us the money to pay for the Essex Junction Public Works Department. That we have an arrangement with the town now where we're sharing the cost of public works throughout the entire community, instead of in the past where the village helped pay for the town's public works, but then we paid 100% of the cost of our own. Now we're putting the total everything into one bucket, and we're dividing that cost equally. So the actual amount that we're raising in property taxes, we're proposing to raise in property taxes, is 3.6 million for the upcoming year.
Okay.
Yep.
Amber.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in support of it. We spent better part of a day going through the budget. This was my first time doing the budget. So it was an interesting process. We spent a day in December, and then we also did, we've had multiple discussions since then, though I don't believe we've had a discussion about, how COVID is going to impact the budget. So I am absolutely in support of it. I agree with George. We really held the line as much as we possibly could. Some last minute changes that I asked for that happened in January or February meeting, I think, was to try to increase some of the revenues that we're seeing coming into the village, rather than just focusing on the money that we're shelling out of the village. And by that, I mean that other towns are charging some higher fees for community development related stuff. And so maybe we want to think about doing that. And so we did add a little bit more for revenue into the budget for that reason.
Okay, great. And Dan, we're talking about the proposed FY21 budget that people are voting on Tuesday.
Yes, I totally support it. And I believe we've done a good job with keeping it in line with, as George said, the cost of living adjustment that we normally see. Obviously, there are things that can throw a curveball into the works. I mean, especially when it comes to, personnel costs, insurance, health insurance, and other insurances that we never know. We just kind of estimate things, and retirements and, needs for certain things. But based on what we know and planned for, it was a good budget. It's conservative, I believe, and not too aggressive. But as Amber was saying, and as we're all aware, with the COVID pandemic, who knows what's going to happen in the next year. So we'll just have to wait and see.
And tell me, do any of you know the general amount that will be raised? Like, let's say for an average homeowner, how much the increase will be for the year? Do you have a sense of that?
Boy, I wish I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
No, I don't. Sorry.
I had a number, but I'm not sure it's right. So I don't want to put that out there in case it's wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
It's once you start, you don't want to do that. So okay. Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about COVID, since it's sort of it's the elephant in the room at the moment, right? In terms of what are you hearing from folks in terms of the revenue side for you? I know some of the municipalities are concerned about folks not paying their property taxes or not be able to pay them on time, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the revenues that may come through hospitality, restaurants, it's that sort of thing. And I think you also have a mask, perhaps, initiative that you all are talking about as well. So Amber, why don't you start us off?
Okay. So I don't share, I guess in regards to the taxes comment, I heard a figure the other day, and again, this is kind of like your figure, it's like throwing it out there, but that 80% of folks who have a mortgage escrow their taxes.
Okay, I have heard that too. Yes.
Yeah, so if that's the case, then the taxes should be paid. I'm also hearing, so even if in the case of the fact that, I don't pay my mortgage, so therefore they can't collect my escrow payment, the mortgage company is still going to pay the taxes because it takes priority over their mortgage. So I think they're still going to get paid. So I'm not so as concerned about the tax situation as I think some other folks are. I guess only time will tell as to how that impacts it. And in regards to the mask, yeah, we had a pretty spirited conversation the other night. One of our most well-attended meetings, even though it was, via Zoom or Microsoft Teams, where we talked about whether we wanted to have an ordinance in the town collectively, in the village and the town, to require folks to wear masks. And we decided that it made sense for a resolution with language saying that we strongly encouraged. Similar, I think, Dan and George, you can kind of correct me. We haven't written this resolution yet, but I think we were leaning toward more the South Burlington language that strongly encouraged versus required language that Burlington passed in public venues. So when you go into restaurants, when you go into the grocery store, those types of things, not if you're walking your dog on the sidewalk situation.
Okay. Dan, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I agree with the idea of a resolution as opposed to an ordinance. And I think this is something that really has been very contentious, not only here in Essex and Vermont, but across the nation. And during this time, we don't need to stir any more emotion than already exists, I believe. So, and the efficacy of masks, depending on who you ask and information, it can be disputed, I guess. But I wear a mask when I go into work. I am working, and I wear a mask when I go into, stores and such in the area, in respect not only from, myself, to take care of myself, but for everyone else. And it's a good example, I guess. And I just like the idea that it's not an ordinance, a rule set in stone, but something that is voluntary. And there are people out there that have, for whatever health reasons, maybe asthma or COPD or some kind of chronic pulmonary disease, something that can't wear masks, so it might be difficult for them. But other than that, I think it's good. One of the call-in participants in the meeting we had the other night suggested that we inspire people to use their masks by saying thanking them for wearing a mask, along with language that can be posted at any businesses in the Junction and the town, explaining that the trustees and select board support the wearing of masks going in and out of businesses and public places, venues, but to thank them, put the language thanking, because that positive reinforcement is key, I think. So overall, I think it's going well.
Okay, George, your comments, your thoughts.
Yeah, I just go back to the impact of the taxes and the COVID-19 and the coronavirus on our taxes for a moment. Oddly, we're paradoxically Essex town and village. We're in a different situation than South Burlington or Williston, in that for years and years we've always wanted to have a sales tax, but we didn't put one in place. And all the communities around Chittenden County have a sales tax. And it's a really fascinating lesson, because you put in a sales tax and you get used to it. It brings in millions of dollars. But all of a sudden the sales, just drop off, and you've got this dependency, and you don't know what you're going to do. We don't have a sales tax. And we're kind of thinking, oh, let's do that. Instead, we're kind of thinking, what, maybe it's better not to do this, because as tough as it is and as tempting as it is to put that in place and get that extra money, you do get dependent on it. And when times get tough, it drops off. So it's a nice cautionary tale for us to be looking at. In terms of the mask thing, yeah, it's contentious. Probably at any one time, if you went into a grocery store and stopped and tested every single person in that store, where they were all wearing masks and not a single person has COVID. But, it's a statistical thing. And in my mind, it's also, it's kind of also a solidarity thing, because there are some people that are out there in the public that can't get away. They have people breathing on them all day long. They have to wear a mask. And so it's kind of saying, we're in this with you. Can I just mention one other thing? I read a really interesting article the other day, and it talked about The psychological impact of this, though, because and I noticed it the other day, when you go into a store and everybody's got a mask on, well, you don't know if they're smiling or laughing. They could be sticking their tongue out at you. And that's okay. But the article is saying, for a lot of people who have emotional disorders, it's a very terrifying thing, because they're in these spaces where they're looking around and everybody's got a mask on. It can be very scary. So, it was an interesting thing for them to bring up. I thought it was something that I hadn't heard discussed before.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, I think everybody's feeling the pressure and the anxiety and the angst, and whether you show it or not, it's there, right? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, tell me a little bit about what are people talking to you about? Are you hearing from constituents? Are people just kind of battening down the hatches, or are they bringing issues and concerns to you all, since you are the leaders of the municipality, right? Dan, let's start with you.
Yeah, I actually have reached out to people when I'm walking out on the street or in a local store. Actually, prior to our meeting discussing the wearing a mask in the community, I just kind of do a random poll. I just ask people, I explain who I am, and just let them know. I basically ask them if they're aware of what's going on in the village, not only with masks, but with the consolidation efforts and the merger attempt that we're trying to move forward. And just get a feeling for their understanding what's going on, and then just give them some information. And as I've always said before, depending on who you talk to, you might get a different story. So if they are in concern or question of what I'm saying, I always tell them, you want to get the facts, you can always go to the town offices, the village offices, and ask the staff. They're going to provide you with the best information. So I think it's going well. I've talked to a lot of people in my neighborhood and in stores, and I've just randomly seen there's still a fair amount of people not wearing masks in stores, but I think there's also a feeling, as George was saying, it's an awkward feeling when you go into a store and you can't see the face, but there's also on the other end, I think the majority of people are wearing masks, so you feel like odd man out or odd woman out, odd person out, not wearing a mask and going in there, and it's kind of without being told, I'm sure they feel a little bit embarrassed. So, maybe that's not the shame, not with the intent to shame them into wearing them, but maybe that's a good thing. So, no, it's all going well.
George, what are you hearing?
We're here. I would agree with just about everything Dan said. I think one of the concerns, if I could, sort of along this line, and I have heard, are from, particularly in the village center, we have 18 eating and drinking establishments, right within 5 corners, bars and restaurants, fast food, takeout, and so forth. And they've really been hit hard. Some of them have been shut down for 2 months now. And we still don't have clear guidance from the state about what's going to happen. It looks like maybe they're going to be allowed to have outdoor seating and maybe limited indoor seating. We've heard unemployment figures for Essex recently, and it has gone up. And I've got to guess that a lot of the folks who are unemployed are people who have been working in bars and restaurants. So it's kind of an issue for us. We're trying to do an initiative with the select board to see if there's something we can't do that helps them out a little bit, encourages more outdoor seating and provides some kind of assistance. What can we do about like liquor licenses that, can they move it outside and so forth? So we're doing that, but it's hard right now. The state is kind of presenting a moving target. If we could only get some clear guidance from the state about what's going to happen, then that gives us some clear guideline. But even now, we still don't know what's going to happen in terms of restaurants and bars having patronage.
And are the restaurants and bars doing takeout at this point, or are they just
most of them are? And some of them are doing well, and some of them I've talked to are struggling. Yeah. I'll put it that way. So yeah, I mean, because some of them really are designed to be, indoor places, and they've just lost their business for 2 months. So yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Amber, what are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the same things that what Dan and George are saying. We have we got quite a few emails about the face mask issue. But other than that, it's been fairly quiet in my inbox for COVID-19 issues. I do think, George, we're going to get some resolution or guidance tomorrow from the governor on the dining issue. So hopefully, we'll have that for our next meeting.
Right. Right.
Okay. What about you all mentioned merger and consolidation, and as long as I've been in Vermont, we've been talking about this for you all.
Right.
Right. So where are you at this point? What does the next year or so look like? Are there major initiatives coming along? I know you've certainly done a lot at this point.
Right.
So is this kind of what's left? But before you answer that question,
right.
we actually have another question. Let's see.
Okay.
Question from one of our chat people. The question is how COVID is affecting local governance and participation. I don't know that we addressed that in particular. So really around how your role has changed, and are different people coming to you, the same people more or less? So Dan, why don't we start with you, since you seem to be up there, at least on my screen.
Well, I mean, not only with my work as a representative as a trustee in the village, but I'm also our representative for the village on the Regional Planning Commission. And so we have annual or monthly meetings, I should say, with Chittenden Regional Planning Commission. So I find that the whole thing of online meeting, we lose a lot of the, the intimacy and the communication between individuals via, internet or phone is not the same. And I think the meetings are quicker, shorter, but that's not necessarily a good thing all the time. And I think it's difficult for a lot of people out there to communicate, when they want to meet with the trustees or talk. It's easier for them to stand up and speak in person as opposed to on a phone, I think, in some ways. So I think we're missing a little bit with that, but I'm thankful we have this medium to exchange information, because I look back 30, 40 years ago, if this were to be happening, what would we do? And back in the days of people mailing letters and writing letters, so we're fortunate we do have this. And I think from what I've seen, it's been okay, not as good. And I think people are anxious not only to get back to work, but people are anxious just to be out in public without masks and being able to interact close up.
And do you have concerns about folks not having access to sufficient internet bandwidth to do video? Is that an issue for you all?
In the village, not so much. I think we have good access with most of the phone carriers, AT&T, Verizon, whatever the other ones, I'm drawing blank, but
Charter, Comcast.
Yeah. So Sprint, but those, we don't have as much of an issue as maybe up in the town. As you start getting up to the town, for a while before I came into the village here, I was living in Westford, and up there, I don't know how it is now, but I would lose my cell signal when I got up into Westford. And that's a problem not only in this area, but across the state. And I really feel bad about it, because today's world, that's necessary. Kids that are taking school classes remotely now, and I've heard over in New York State, I don't know if they're doing it here, they take school buses out to some of the rural communities in upstate New York and act as a mobile hotspot for kids to actually access their lessons. So it could be difficult for rural areas.
Amber, your thoughts on participation in the time of COVID?
So I actually feel like we probably have more participants because I think it's easier to sit in your PJs and the living room.
Are you in your PJs?
No.
I'm not going to lie, it's happened. I'm not now. I did not get out of my work clothes, so I am dressed up, but not every time I attend a meeting. So I do think it's easier in that regards. But I do think one of the challenges is like when we are in a physical meeting at 81 Main or 2 Lincoln, we have a protocol. We raise our hand. We're addressed by the president. You speak. It's very hard not to speak over each other, and because you just can't, like, you can't see that pause, and it's so that's been tricky. But I think that we have good participation. We have call in. We have the ability for people to call in, even if they don't have internet access, so that they can't stream it. And I think, we had some kinks early on, but I think we've kind of gotten through those. I'm not sure what meeting Dan's at in regards to shorter meetings.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Apparently he's not at the same
what meetings were you at? Or did you just cut out earlier? That's all.
Right. He was napping. So we've had some lively debates even over, Microsoft Teams, but I think I feel like we're doing a good job, but I definitely prefer to be in person for sure.
Yeah.
And do you have a sense of when you have your meeting, do you know how many people are participating? Can you actually like are there actually more than would come to a meeting? Like what are the numbers like? Do you know? 10, 20, 30, just.
Oh, we had like I think around 26, 28 or something like that. 26, 28 last Tuesday.
That sounds like a lot to me.
It is.
It is a lot, and as the hours go by, they drop off. So
sure.
Yeah, I don't think we've had. I mean, we've had some discussions in person, like when we talked about the dog ordinance. I think we had a full room. So what was that? 30 people, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe more. So we don't see a ton of folks at meetings, anyways. It's only when large items of importance have come up that folks attend, and even then, I still don't think that we see a lot of folks. So this has been helpful, I think.
Yeah, well, and don't forget, people can always tune in Channel 17 on demand.
Absolutely.
So sometimes that as well. So
absolutely.
George, did you want to comment on that as well?
Maybe just one slightly different take. I for some reason feel sort of out of touch with the village staff. For some reason when we're meeting live, you frequently see the librarian or Jim Jutras, who runs our water treatment plant, or the fire chief, and you're sort of used to bumping in and rubbing elbows with these people and getting a sense of how they're doing. And it all seems very distant right now, and it's a little concerning. I know that we know that so many people in the village, in particular, depend on our recreation department. Our recreation department provides childcare, provides several different levels of daycare, certified daycare, and working parents really depend on it. But having schools closed, they really depend on it, and yet it's been shut down. And yet I feel very distant. I know that it's out there and it's happening and it's a problem, but I for some reason just don't feel in touch with the problem at all. So as an elected official, in a trustee, you kind of lose that sense of the place, that sense of the community when you are only seeing it on the video screen. I don't know if that explains it, but that's sort of that's what's going on with me.
Yeah. Interesting. Let's also let folks know, I'm going to let them know two things. One, of course, if you want to call in, this is a new number for us, 1-929-205-6099. And you all have an informational meeting on June 1st, which I assume is via a online platform. Can one of you give us a little just information about that in case folks want to tune in?
I can do that, Diane, and Amber and Dan can chime in. That's basically normally our normal format is annual meeting, and that's live, and people show up at Essex High School and we debate the budget. We present the budget live, and people get to ask questions about the budget, and we answer the questions, and then we vote on the budget by voice, sort of a traditional annual meeting. And so this is kind of like the online version of that, although we're not going to be voting on the budget, but hopefully questions that people have about the budget, we can answer them, we can present the budget. Now, here's the problem. It's a little out of whack because people have been getting the ballots and voting on the budget all along, and so they haven't had that opportunity to ask questions. So we're hoping it's going to be okay. But I think when we talk about if we were going to do this regularly, I think we'd need a much better system for coordinating our communication with the voting. They're sort of out of sync.
Okay.
And so.
And how do folks log into that program on June 1st? When is evening, I assume?
Yeah, I mean, it should be. We have we don't use Zoom. We use Microsoft. What is it, Amber?
Teams. Microsoft Teams.
And it works the same as it's the same thing as Zoom. And we broadcast the link all over the place, put it on the websites and on Front Porch Forum and everything. So, and I think it was on our ballots. I'm not sure. So it's pretty well publicized throughout the community, and we'll be hitting it again. So people just can click on that and they can observe the meeting and ask questions. And it's the same as Zoom. There's a chat box and they can ask questions. I'm not really sure how it's all going to work if we have like 150 people show up. It could be a little chaotic, but we'll see what happens.
Okay. And I should also mention too that I believe Evan Teach and your village staff person were on Channel 17 maybe last week doing
right.
and that's available on demand for folks as well if people want to watch that. So that's
right.
available as well.
Yeah.
And
I'd also say too, George, that one thing is if anybody ever has any questions, whether it's about the budget or any other topic, all of our emails are on the village's website and they can email us.
Right.
My phone number is not on there, but I think George, Dan, and Andrews, I think Raj and I don't have our phone numbers for some reason, but. Intentional, unintentional, I don't know.
Well, you got to do that. How did that happen, Amber?
But if they want me, they can call George.
Right.
George will take my calls.
Here, George.
No, that's not okay.
Okay, I'll let you guys battle. You can duke that out later.
All right.
See, the benefit of an online meeting, there's no physical confrontation.
No.
Right.
No.
Okay, so let's get back. Actually, I got to know also that your meeting on Monday, it's Monday night, right? The 1st, yes. Monday evening will also be live on town meeting television as well, where you are right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep.
Good. So hopefully they haven't all checked their ballots off and mailed them in yet. They get to have one more opportunity.
Yeah.
So let's do that. And so we don't lose the thread about the merger, consolidation, where you're at right now, kind of what you see in the upcoming year or so. And I think, Amber, it's your turn to go first, if you'd like.
So I think the answer to where we're at with the merger is we actually have a meeting Tuesday night. I'm looking at George and Dan like, maybe?
No, it's further back. It's in the middle of June.
15th.
Yeah. So we have an upcoming meeting at some point, which is in my calendar, but I won't look at my phone, to discuss the next steps on the merger. So we've done a considerable amount of work on it, and the intention was to have a vote in November, but then COVID hit. And so we've kind of, obviously our focus has shifted to where it should at this point. So we kind of need to regroup as the town in general, as the select board and the trustees, and kind of figure out where we're going. So I don't think any of us can answer that question until we've had that meeting.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to comment about where you think you're at?
Yeah. We have a draft charter for basically a new community that would dissolve the existing charters for Essex Junction and Essex Town and create a new unified charter. We have all the details worked out for what the representation model would be, phasing in taxes, how to handle all the various departments and consolidate everything. It's about 95% done. We've been working on it for over a year, and then now it's on hold. And the concept, as Amber said, was, we deliberately tried to aim it for November because we figured there's a maximum turnout for that election, presidential and state election. So that would maximize the turnout we get locally. So the decision we're going to have to make is, do we want to move forward with that? And I'm guessing it's looking like they're probably going to do what we're doing now, which is to have mail-in ballots. That's what this looks like. I don't know. If that's the case, it's an opportunity, I think. But so we're just going to have to see and go through the discussion and see what happens.
And do you think that the way we vote will have an impact on whether or not you'd bring that forward, or that's just sort of something to add into the mix?
In my mind, I just think the most important thing is to get the maximum number of votes on it, to really get to, whether it's yes or no, to really get a good solid answer. But I think if everyone is voting from home, in my mind, it also says it's an opportunity to really inform people ahead of time and really carefully explain what it's all about and give the numbers and give the details. I think in a way, people will be looking for that kind of information perhaps more than they would in a live balloting election.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And do you feel like you have sufficient time? I mean, it's already June, right? To put it together? Yeah.
We, one of the things like George, you're saying about, with the mail-in ballots, one concern I have is when you make the effort to show up at the polling place to vote in person, you're going there with that intent. So you have some understanding of what you're going there for, and who the candidates are and what are the issues that you're going to be voting on. Whereas when we're going with a mail-in ballot, I think many people, we normally see maybe 2% of the voters. Yeah. So we're mailing out to 100% nearly, and so how many of those 100% are actually researching things, or just kind of randomly, yes, no, not even looking at the issues? And I get concerned. You're getting votes from people that really aren't maybe the best, not educated, but not have the best knowledge of what's going on before they make a vote. It's not an educated vote, possibly, as much so as maybe when it's at a polling place where people are going in, or they're showing up and asking for an absentee ballot. When you make that extra effort, you obviously are concerned about what is happening in the community. Whereas a lot of these people, not for whatever reason, I'm not saying it's bad, but I think a lot of people don't get involved unless it personally hits them. They pay their taxes, they do the right things, but they really don't get. In fact, one thing I'll say, Diane, is I found a lot of people in our community, speaking of the merger, you said, this issue has been going on since you've moved here to Vermont, but people are unaware whether they live in the town or the village. And I say, are you a resident? Where do you live? I was a state trooper for 26 years. And whenever I'd stop somebody or dealt with somebody in that capacity as a trooper, I'd say, where do you live? And they say, I live in Essex Junction. They give me their address. Well, knowing the community, they'd say, oh, well, I live in Essex Junction on Old Stage Road. Well, if you live on Old Stage Road in Essex, you're in the town of Essex, not in Essex Junction. And I just think that there's just a lot of people out there that just aren't aware of a lot of the issues, and to that extent, actually, whether they live in Essex Town or Essex Junction, the village. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did a survey last summer, and we were surprised at how many people who live in the town think they live in the village, and how many people who live in the village think they live in the town. And surprisingly, a lot of them have been here a long time. And I don't know exactly what that all means. I think it's sort of a lack of, I don't think it is necessarily a bad sign. It's like, well, everything's going well, so, it seems to be fine. So I'm not really sure, I'm not really sure what it means, but it's surprising.
One other issue is that I didn't bring this into it, but the whole tax structure this blends right into the whole tax structure between the village and the town. As George alluded to earlier, the town adopted our public works budget into their budget. So, people from outside the town are paying into a portion of that, but the village pays generally 100% of everything else within our community, the village, and we also pay the taxes to the town as a whole. So, whereas the people outside the village, a lot of them, some are aware, but a lot are not aware of that tax structure. So when they come and they say, well, why can't my kids go to the village daycare programs, and why do we have to pay more for the use of the pool, this or that, the other thing. Well, that's because that's a pool that's funded. Those rec programs and all the services we have here are funded by village residents, so we get first dibs. Whereas we also pay for their programs in their town as well. Rec department out there. We're trying to work through that issue, and we're trying to do it respectfully to everyone, and so that they understand what's going on. And that's one of the biggest issues, is just getting people educated to how it is taken care of, how municipal services are paid for, and who pays what.
So in some ways, it sounds like, certainly consolidation is what many people think you already have, or some people already
Correct.
think you are.
Sure.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? A lot of people against it, people for it, but then some people think, oh, well, isn't that what we have now? So that's interesting too.
Yeah. And I'd say the other interesting thing is a lot of people outside of Essex and Essex Junction think, the Hatfields and McCoys are at each other's throats and we're arguing, and we're not. We've actually had a shared manager now since 2014, and we've had a shared administrative structure. We meet, just as I mentioned, we have joint meetings with the select board all the time, and we've been getting along pretty well with them. Sometimes when they make us wait to join their meeting, we get a little ticked off. But we're the whole, and we've got all kinds of our departments are, a lot of our departments are consolidated or aligned in different ways. So I think we're at a very different place in the community than where we've been in past merger efforts. So that's why this one will be interesting to see where it goes.
So what percentage how far along are you? It doesn't sound like there's a whole lot left, but they must be the harder things to do. Is that fair? Sort of an analysis of it?
Yes. Well, yeah, really what's left is the village has a fire department, its own community development department, its own public works department, and the library. And I think fire, and I think when people see basic municipal services, you can make the case that we should all be paying the same cost for those things. But I think probably what we've seen in the past, for some reason, is the recreation departments, and in particular, when we talk about consolidating those, for some reason, it really gets people's backs up. I don't know why. So that's a big one. And our rec departments are very different, because the village's rec department is run very much like an enterprise operation. It has a $2.5 million budget, but only about $500,000 of that comes from taxes. It really has all these programs that it operates for the whole community, and it brings people in from all over Chittenden County. And the town's recreation department is more of a traditional recreation department. So that's kind of that's one of the big things that's, in my mind, has been one of the challenges in the past.
Okay. So it sounds like stay tuned on the merger consolidation, and very well maybe on the ballot in November, it sounds like.
Possibly.
Possibly. Okay. And let's just recap. We're just about out of time. So let's just recap what folks should do. They should, June 1st on Monday evening, sign into the online budget and discussion. Yes?
Yep.
And they should return their ballots or vote on Tuesday.
That's right.
Time, 10 to 7. I wrote this down. I believe it's 10 to 7 at the Essex High School.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
If they want to vote in person.
Yes.
But they got their ballot, and if they didn't, they should get a hold of the town clerk. How's that?
Yes. Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
All right. Good.
Very good.
So
very good.
Thank you so much for your patience for our Zooming tonight, and taking time out to talk with us and your constituents as well.
Okay.
Thank
you, Diane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night, guys.
Bye, Amber. Bye, Dan.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.